Hey there, this is Dan. You're watching The Salty Sea, and today I have something a little different. This is going to be the Patreon Black Library Book Club. We've started this quarterly, and it's going to be a ton of fun. We are talking about the book Hallowed Ground by Richard Strachan. I actually don't know how to pronounce that name, but someone will correct me, I'm sure. We've got a few folks here to discuss it. We've also got a few folks, Darren and JJ, who read the book and are not here to discuss it, so shame to them. But we've got Mike, Chris, and Kaylor. How are you guys doing today?
Doing well.
Doing great.
That's dandy.
All right, sweet. So let's start things off light, and then we'll go heavy later. For people who have never read the book, we will be getting into spoilers here, airy and Cheeto like, for the first question. What was just like a cool thing that you read that stuck with you?
I'll start it off.
All right,
In the
sweet.
end siege part, you've got Duralia trying to hijack a Corresian overlord's ship to make it up to the spire for the finale.
Yes.
That was just very steampunk and like over the top Age of Sigmar to me.
Totally.
I like that part too.
For
That was
me,
super cool.
it was when it was the first time one of the zombies comes out of the earth, and she's like getting ready to kill it. She's got her crossbow, and she hesitates, and the people around her think she's hesitating because she's scared, but actually she's hesitating because she actually is like willing to traumatize everyone in the town in order to see where the zombie wants to go. So she's like, if I kill it, then I'm not going to find out which direction it's headed, and this is going to be a huge pain. Meanwhile, everyone's panicking and being like, do not let that thing get into the town. And I just...
Let's tranquilize the bear just yet. Let's see what it wants. Let's see what it's getting into.
Yeah.
It makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I liked it because both perspectives made perfect sense. Like, of course, the townsfolk don't want it to like wander through the town, hurt somebody, etc. They have no idea what she's thinking. But anyway, I liked it. I liked the tension in that moment.
Yeah, I just really like anything to do with Excelsis as a city. I like the idea of the glimmerings. I like the Spear of Malleus, whatever that may be.
Mm-hmm.
I just love that as a setting.
Yeah, there was a little bit of like Les Mis vibes with the way they were like blocking off little side streets during the final battle too. That was kind of cool.
I've had enough time, and I've thought of two, if that's allowable in our completely loose format.
Yeah.
You found two things that you liked in this book?
Yeah.
Wow.
Rude.
Give him enough time. He'll have a third one to make up for the fact that you don't have a second one, Chris.
Yeah. I've said everything. I can log off now.
I enjoyed the scene with the, I'm trying to think of the right word to describe it, but like the fake witch hunter, the guy that was just posing the entire time.
Yeah,
that was a super cool. Just like, no, this guy's kind of lying about everything. I'm just gonna kill him. This guy doesn't get to do this anymore.
Yeah.
And then I really loved it. I guess it's not even the second thing. It's a whole bunch of different scenes. So there's an innumerable, Chris, that I'm helping you out with. But any scene when they raised up like the destruction armies, so like especially like the Gargant stuff, and then the big Oryx and stuff, just like with pulling them back to life. It was just really evocative, thinking of like, oh, this is really destruction models that you already know and love, but like they're undead versions of it. I was like,
yeah.
Obviously not if you're there in real life, but
I wish we got models for that kind of thing.
You can probably do it, honestly. You just like, I think the skulls kit has probably got some at least Oryx skulls in there, so just switch them out and be fun to do.
And then paint it kind of creepy. Like you'd have to kind of take like your hobby clippers or something and kind of like dig into into like the skin or like the. I mean, it's hard. GW plastic is hard plastic, but you could probably do it.
Yeah, I think a lot of that, if you were handy with green stuff, you could go pretty far. You'd have to be real handy.
Welcome, Darren. We shamed you for not being here, but now you're here.
Yeah, I'm here. I did it.
Yeah. So now JJ's the only person who read it who didn't show up. JJ,
way to go, JJ! Unbelievable.
the one note he gave me was that the book should have started in chapter 4, and then he gave me a bunch of technical reasons why. Anyway, JJ, for people who don't know, he is a writer, and so he had writerly notes.
Published. I think it's fair to put it that he professionally
yes,
is a writer.
he is professionally a writer. This is how he feeds himself. Yes.
But his critiques are valid.
Yeah, totally.
So I listened to the audiobook. Which chapter was chapter 4? Is that where they finally start tracking the vampire?
I think that's when she starts messing with the fake witch hunter in the town.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Yeah,
Yep. Yeah, I would agree.
She shoots him at the end of chapter 3.
Oh, okay. Then he said it should have started in chapter 3. Yeah. There we go.
Yeah, that's it. I really liked the first half where it was like it felt like a Western novel.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
kind of a tone shift.
Tone shift's a thing. Something that I really hate in most works of art anyway, so that was jarring, but I liked the two settings individually.
Yeah.
I just don't think
I'm going to count that as two positive things that you said, Chris. I'm keeping note.
I think so too. I love the tone.
I forgot that you weren't terribly up on it.
I love the tone shift in Anora, if any of you guys have seen the movie that just won Best Picture. But you've got to kind of like foreshadow that there might be a tone shift in like the first couple chapters. I don't know. It's how'd you guys what?
You just don't do it. You guys do it anyway.
Yeah, you just do it. Yeah, nobody's stopping you from not making a promise of a tone shift.
Yeah. How did you guys get along with the characters? I have a lot of thoughts on the two characters, but I want someone else to go first. Someone who's not Chris and not me should go first.
I thought Doralia was just kind of unlikable, but in like a way that didn't totally bug me. I'm like, yeah, she's a witch hunter, and she's like kind of an ass. It is what it is.
She's drunk that doesn't care what she drinks, and sometimes she doesn't, but mostly she does.
Did we mention the firewater?
All right, if it's going to go there, I wrote down some quotes that made me struggle with the first part of this. Just like, I don't drink to feel different. I drink to feel normal.
Yeah.
Little tones of alcoholism in this book. That tone doesn't change.
The author was British, right? So
right.
There was out of tone there.
Or
maybe if I'd listened to Dan reading the audiobook, I would have liked it more. That was very cool.
And once we meet Galen, I feel like he's kind of drawn in this same way, but like it's extreme noir, like the whole time with the two of them, which I think is very it's very Black Library, where it's like GW, their whole shtick is to go to 11, like this setting goes to 11 at all times, and there were times when that didn't work for me. Like when I wrote that down, it was kind of fun to say it just now. It was actually a lot of fun to say, but to read, it wasn't that fun. And I will say, though, that as soon as Casper showed up, I started liking Doralia a lot more. And I liked Galen in the short amount of time we got to have him and Casper in the same room, where basically I found the witch hunters to be these like noir edgelords that I didn't want to spend time with. And then as soon as Casper started making fun of Doralia, what's that?
Right.
Like, for example, he goes, brooding and vengeance do seem to come with the territory for your sort. Like he's just like savaging her, but with a smile the whole time that they're together. And so it made it so that like as he started warming up to them, I warmed up to them a little bit, like through him, because he reacted to them the same way that I would react, which is like, these people are insane. These people like do not belong on this earth. What is wrong with them? And then as he starts to warm up with them, I was I became more interested into them, which I don't know if, I mean, we said spoilers, but when the thing that happens to Casper,
Yeah.
I struggled for a few chapters after that.
He gets lunched.
Yeah.
He gets lunched. Not only that, but he like it's what happens after his death too is just like so like it just feels so bad. It's like, man, he spent all that time and effort and went through all of that
Right.
just to become literally lunch.
Yeah.
Jasper
when
salad.
when you were talking, Dan, in the Discord about how much you liked Casper, I had just gotten past that part and I was like, oh
Oh, right, because I started posting
Yeah, well,
about how
he's-
cool Casper was before I'd read. Yeah.
Yeah, he's the only character that has like a character arc.
Mhm.
Yeah, he
And
goes from
it's
alive
only
and not
it's only
Yeah.
right, it's only 90 degrees.
Yeah. Oh,
It was pretty good.
Right.
Actually-
Whereas I think the thing that I find really objectionable with the two Van Dents in the book is like you're right about it being a noir, but a good noir is all about show and not tell.
Oh,
Like-
sure.
Sam Spade doesn't spend half the books telling you what a miserable bastard he is.
He's
kind
just
of-
a miserable
you can-
bastard.
Yeah, you see the way he
yeah.
like interacts with people, but he's not, thinking about himself and
Sure.
and telling you about himself the whole time the way these two characters are.
Yeah.
If someone's familiar, is that an author, or I'm just wondering if it's a medium difficulty where it's like I can imagine a film genre versus a book genre.
Yeah, so he's one of the classic, like he's the Dashiell Hammett classic noir detective, right? Like him and Philip Marlowe in Mental Book.
It's okay. I don't know any of
yeah.
the names you're saying. So
Yeah.
Well, like the classic American noir novels, like Maltese
Okay.
Falcon, The Big Sleep, Chandler, Raymond Chandler is Philip Marlowe. Like those are not necessarily nice people, right? They
Right.
have a strong code that they live by. Again, tying into what Dan is saying about these being noir characters.
Mhm.
They've got that strong code, but you kind of see how they live by it. You don't have them
You don't get
tell
the
you
exposition.
that
Right.
they're doing
It was sad,
everything
man,
to
is
live
what
by
I
it.
heard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting because, like, I enjoyed Doralia up to a point. Like, she was always a little more hard-ass than she needed to be and just a little too far. But, like, I didn't hate her. Galen came on, and I'm like, why is this guy in this book? He is, like, such a stereotype. He's useless in a fight. He's supposed to be good, but he's just totally a waste.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
The thing that made me the maddest about him was they kept they're like, and his leg really hurts and it's not going well. And then they never did a payoff with it. I was like,
Right.
oh, that's how he's gonna get destroyed apparently. And no, he was fine the whole time. He just
Or it's
had a
like
limp.
you need him to have to chase someone. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, his
Right.
leg hurts.
Right.
Oh, now he's going to be in a chase. Like, what's that Bond movie where the whole, the first 15 minutes is a parkour battle? Something like that.
but
would've
somehow
been
he
great.
outruns zombies later on. So
He does. And he's just smacking him in one hit without breaking stride the whole time. Yeah.
It was whatever the opposite of Chekhov's gun is. That's what.
Yeah, I was gonna say the Van Dent's limp. Yeah.
Yeah. How did you guys get along with Jail Morgaine?
So I've listened through a couple of other vampire audiobooks, like vampire related ones. I
Sure.
listened through The Hollow King and
New Moon.
That took me a second.
It was a Twilight joke.
He was
oh,
he
sure,
was
sure,
just
sure, sure,
listing
sure.
Twilight books. Yeah.
But yeah, and whatever the monster lady vampire one was. And what's that?
Is it?
Yeah, Laukovai's, whatever.
Vampire
yeah,
Masquerade?
Close, no cigar. But I like those depictions of vampires more, but it's also like those are vampire specific novels.
Right, like
I didn't
from
think
the
that it was
vamp-
like too bad. Like she was still maniacally evil, but she had like just a little bit of humanity in there. But yeah, not my favorite, I
Sure.
guess. But like, I don't know, could have been worse. She just felt kind of like, I don't know, like weirdly puppeted at the end, where she's like, "Oh, is she on her own? Is she not on her own? Was this all the plan of the necromancer? Is it not all the plan of the necromancer? It's just whatever we happen to tell you last."
Her arc was tough for sure. I kind of, when she showed up, I kind of appreciated the mustache twirliness because at first it was tough to figure out, like, is this a book that's trying to take itself seriously, or it, like, what's going on here? And then when she shows up and she is the most mustache twirling that you could possibly be, it's like, oh, okay, they're telling us this is pulp and you should treat it as pulp. And so that was a nice little signal. And then she continues to be, I think the thing that Richard was trying to get to was, like, I think he wanted her to do for the reader what Casper had been doing for the reader, as be that like kind of accent to what the Van Dents were doing. I don't think that worked for me so much, but I did start to like her the most of the trio as we went through that, like, middle third of the book. Because she's kind of silly and fun in that mustache twirly way, and the scenes between her and Casper, the few that we get, oh man. They are, we've savaged this book a little bit, and we will continue to, but I actually think that those, as far as like this amp goes up to 11, that really went up to 11 in a way that I think GW does strive for. Just all of those scenes, and the way she's going, like, oh, he'll be fine. He died a hero. He'll come back as a Stormcast. But we know that when people come back as a Stormcast, they die and there's an explosion of lightning. So, like, we know that he's not coming back as a Stormcast, but she doesn't know that. And so, like, there's that tension there. That's I don't know. It was good. I thought all of that was pretty well done.
I liked just the hand waviness of it, where it's like, don't worry about him. He's probably gonna be fine.
Yeah, he'll be fine. He'll be a Stormcast. It's like, wait a second.
I want to read the book where Galen goes back to his town in the realm of death and Shaiish, and then finds what happened to Casper.
Yeah,
that'd be pretty funny.
He's the best character in the novel. I agree that if they ever write another Van Denst one, he should make a return as either they like hand wave it and say that he is a Stormcast. I guess if you don't die in a bolt of lightning, you can still come back as the Stormcast team that has the color scheme that Chaos Warriors have. I can't remember what that team is called, but there is a Stormcast team for people who didn't get harvested on death. They get kind of taken from Shaiish. But
there's Sigmar is a soul thief in a lot of very creative ways. So
he has all kinds of ways to do it. But yeah, I would like to see him in a future novel with them for sure. Any other characters you want to like talk about how you liked them before we get onto themes?
Yeah. So I wanted to see a lot more of Briomedes, the Necromancer.
Sure.
I thought he was the most compelling character in the entire book. I guess him and the one female guard captain.
She was cool.
Yeah.
In the city. When going into the city.
Yeah, but like, Briomedes has this epic grief, and he's pulling off like the most epic feat of necromancy.
Yeah.
Like that I've ever read about in, a Warhammer book.
Yeah.
And we don't really get to meet him.
Yeah,
I was bummed we never had a slapstick scene when you finally get to meet the child and it's a bunch of dead baby jokes. I felt like that was I was ready for it. Editorial choices, I would have said, hey, maybe a couple of dead baby jokes instead of
I feel like with how sorry, go ahead.
You should go. Okay. I think you should go.
I feel like Dralia definitely had the opportunity and the characterization to make a couple dead baby jokes, like as she was dispatching him.
Mm-hmm. It would have been cool. Like just a really good, like sappy line. Like I don't have any good ones. I should have thought of some after I had this. But that's why I'm not a writer.
Yeah, Mike, what do you do in your spare time? Well, sometimes I think of dead baby jokes.
Yeah, but not at the right time.
Yeah, not at the right time.
Yeah.
I don't have them when I need them, and I have them when I need them.
Your cup overfloweth in opportune moments.
I did like the female guard captain. I wish I wasn't blanking on her name because I thought she was pretty compelling. I thought that if I can edge us into kind of talking about the themes of the book, I thought that the way in which Galen started gushing about her and how much she reminds him of his daughter was such like a true to life thing of the way, and this is usually complained about by young women, but like young competent women, often more attractive young competent women, often will say that older men will like be incredibly friendly while talking to them and talk to them about how much they remind them of their daughter. And she's just kind of humoring him the whole time. Like I felt like he was actually reaching for that kind of thing. And I thought it was so interesting how she, one, was incredibly interesting, both in the ways she had been like passed over by the leadership of Excelsis, and then also just like completely rose to the occasion in the siege, and then also the way that she brought out this like paternal, I almost want to say longing in Galen. Like she made him want to be a better father in this interesting way, which I thought, I thought it was interesting. Kind of every single character, except for poor Casper, every single character is motivated by some sort of parent-child relationship in this story. And so I thought that she was an interesting into that, as far as like them creating a parent-child relationship that wasn't necessarily by blood, which was kind of cool. How do you guys feel? So,
Dan, real quick, just with that one, there's like a counter view of that where it's just like the whole book. Galen is just like, I can't believe I got my daughter into it. I should never. And then he sees this woman who's doing a good job at it, even though his daughter's doing a good job, and he goes, "You're like the daughter I never had."
I know.
Essentially. Like that was the vibe that I got from it. That like he kind of and like maybe it was like intended to be like an affirmation of just going like, no, like, see, this person isn't blood related to you, and it's okay that they live this kind of life, so it should be okay for you to have dragged your daughter in.
Right.
I don't know if
that... I think Dick wanted us to like think that was what opened up Galen to being more paternal at the end. So I think that's what we were supposed to get from that.
Okay.
But I do think it's funny of just like, because he's a bad dad, right? And and so her just like bringing all of this out of him is pretty funny. I wanted to ask though about like the paternal motivation, or like the parental motivations of the two villains, and the way they kind of contrast with our two, whether we call them anti-heroes or heroes, our two protagonists. Do you feel like those relationships contrast in a compelling way? Do you think, because it's clearly like the author meant for this book to be about parenthood, right? And, or at least about parent-child relationships. And I just wanted to know like what you guys thought of the villain ones in comparison to the protagonist ones, what you thought about, whether they contrast in an interesting way, just kind of, how it worked for you.
Yeah, I thought the Braimedes and Galen Van Denst dichotomy was pretty interesting. the thing that I thought was the most funny about the Briomedes one is that I think it was pitched in such a way that, like, had he actually worked it out and not gotten interrupted, like, everything would have went back, like, including potentially, well, I guess the kid wasn't that old and he wasn't that recently a zombie, but, like, he would have set everything back and, like, it would have actually been all good. And then everyone just, like, mucked it up. But yeah, I thought that, like, if that wasn't the case and he would just turn everything back and then actually screw everything up in the process.
Aaron, was that a subtle Briomedes did nothing wrong?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that if the outcome was really good, then potentially, all right.
Is it means? Okay, we get it.
Yeah. I'm a death guy. You know, I'm gonna side with a good necromancer given the opportunity. But yeah, and so I thought that, you know, maybe there's an interesting theme there. It's like, you know, given the opportunity to take it all back, Briomedes did, and Galen Van Denst absolutely cannot, right? And Briomedes is taking as much action as he can to correct the mistake that he had that, you know, doomed his son.
It's an interesting, got me thinking after that one. Yeah,
that was good, Darren. You shut us all up. Anytime in a book club where you can shut everybody up with what you say.
Nice. Well, I felt like there was not like a coherent thesis there, but just like food for thought, you know?
I mean, the thesis of if it worked, what is the harm to literally everybody is a
right, exactly
thought that never really struck me. It's like, oh, what's he actually the good guy? Where it's a really fascinating
there really is the real villain of the piece.
Oh, yeah, pretty much. She's an idiot for not catching it the first time. She's an idiot for mucking it up.
Right, she's wearing a black hat. Like, how did you not realize that she's the bad guy?
Exactly.
Not in the book. That's only in the picture. In the book, she's hatless. She's meant to be ambiguous, maybe. A broader statement on the intent of the strictly hat-related stuff in Warhammer. These are the rules.
Yeah, the picture I've got up on screen of her with a black hat is from, I think it's from the Soulbound. Cubicle 7, the best art that exists in Warhammer is all of the Cubicle 7 Soulbound stuff. I hope we get a second edition of AOS Soulbound, not because I've ever played the game. I've never played it, but just because the art they commissioned is so fucking good that we just need it. We need all of it. Plus, it has a white background, so it works for my thumbnails. It's amazing.
Nice.
It's a very wishful thought that you have there, Dan, that they won't just reuse most of the assets in the second edition.
Fair.
Yeah, don't you know if they don't make a lot of money, they need to save as much as they can?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there was such a missed opportunity there because some of the early Age of Sigmar books were about a group of soulbound until they upset the author enough that he quit.
Oh no!
And now
that's so what Christmas opening happens to Richard Strachan.
Oh man!
For what it's worth, I did to Richard Strachan if he hears this. I did enjoy the book. I mean, is it like literature? No, it's a novel. It was fine.
Well, it's pulp fiction, right? And so
yes, yeah.
I feel like I'm wanting to ask it questions that it can't answer, but it does a good enough job being what it is to make me then want to go to the next step and ask it questions that it can't answer, right? But that's kind of cool. I don't know how much I would have been excited to like get through that kind of that 60% mark of the book, like after Casper's dead, if it had been reading on my own, but overall, like I was glad I read it, and I think the world building bits of it were interesting. But I don't want to give up on this parenthood conversation, because I do think a place that kind of wobbled for me was So Jael Morgaine is the villain who has an actual relationship with our characters, which I agree with Chris that Bryamedes, they give you just enough of him for you to think that he's more compelling. I wonder if they'd given you more of him if he would have become less compelling. Jael is the one that you're nodding, Chris.
Yeah, yeah.
But leave him wanting more. Like that's a good.
I would compare him to Salt as a character, but I know Chris would disagree with that sentiment. No, keep going, more and more salt. It won't ruin the dish if we cover it in salt, which doesn't apply.
Yeah.
Dan, I did really like, and sorry, I meant to say this when we were talking about Jael. Kind of non-specific characters withstanding, I always enjoy good guys and bad guys having to work together for a single goal that they both are looking to move towards.
Yeah.
Like Star Wars had a really good classic example of that. Prequel trilogies, and I was like, oh, it's just fun concept, and those are always some of my favorite episodes. They're like, we hate each other, but now we're friends for a while, and it's just like it is cool, like just to see how people that would never spend time together would spend together, even.
Yeah, I wish they would have kept that up for the whole book. I didn't like what I felt was the cheap twist at the end.
Yeah. Do you
I think it would have been better if Jael had actually stayed on their side.
Right.
No, and then agree. After they've dealt with Bryamedes, then there's a moral question about how to resolve the tension between them. Like that would have been much more compelling.
Yeah.
And maybe, then you have, this vampire character available in other books to pop up and be a recurring bad guy.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Don't kill your villains, people. Like villains can be so much more useful. I just want to say this to every author. Like, think twice before you kill your villains. Jesus. I agree with that. I think the finale that I was bracing for the entire time would have been more interesting than the finale that we get. And like, I really didn't enjoy when Jael, like, we have the wobble about whether we start questioning her free will and which things did she do on purpose and which things did she do against her will. And it kind of makes you look back on everything you've read. It's supposed to make you look back and question everything you've read, but instead it made me look back and wonder if the things I enjoyed were not that enjoyable. Like it made me rethink the things I'd read, but in a negative light, which didn't totally work for me. I don't know. It was too bad because I kind of liked what Jael was doing. And then
I think what would have added to that, what would have been really cool is if, as almost like it's totally fluff and you would never write a book this way, but after the fact, once all the conclusions to the story had happened, going back and giving Jael's perspective and she was happy between trying to, just show experience was between is Bryamedes, toying with her, or is she, is she debating between I think that's a really interesting perspective, but not one that you can show through really without having, unless you're just okay with not having maybe the arguments here sound like that should have been the better framework.
Yeah.
Maybe I missed something in the book, but I'm still not entirely sure what Bryamedes' plan was to get the only people that could stop him to show up at the time of the ritual.
Yeah, so there was
did he need them for some part of the ritual? Or?
Yeah, it was like the parental child
bond.
Energy bond thing, right? He needed to sacrifice Aurelia in order to fuel the ritual to bring his son back.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So I guess that kind of ties back into the overarching theme of contrasting
Right.
Different parent-child relationships too.
Right, because it's like
I thought the jails wasn't particularly well contrasted against, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because you don't see much of it.
You don't see it, and then it's essentially used as blackmail, and then it makes you sort of shaky about what her motivations actually were, and how many of the bad things that she did were her, how many of the good things that she did were her. I agree. The jail parental stuff didn't totally work for me.
Who, if you had to rank worst parents in the book, who's your worst and who is your least worst parents in the book? Andy, are you still there? Did you fall asleep on us? Or we all talk?
Galen, automatically the worst.
For sure.
I don't think there's any argument there, right?
I'd say Briomedes is worse because his kid actually died.
That's just caring.
That is
objective. He showed his caring in a really extreme way.
Yeah. I mean, he was trying to undo it, but it happened,
He was trying to give him more presents to make up for all of the terrible parenting that he did. He was like, what if I got you like a new life? Wouldn't that be great?
Exactly.
You say that like it's a bad thing.
Like he brought him back as a zombie already, right? I mean, he's a necromancer. What's the problem here, right?
I do have to say, when Doralia's like walking through bars in Excelsis being like, have you seen a dude with the creepiest kid you've ever fucking seen? And that's the only way that she can ask people around about whether they've seen Briomedes. I thought that was pretty funny.
I love the idea of like Briomedes' kid just being like a classic 90s movie where he's just like, Dad, it's always about son. And he's like, but I'm doing it for you, son.
Also,
you can't understand, I know, but it's all for you.
Also, Mike, for some reason, when you talk, the first 15 seconds are good, and then after that, like 1 out of every 3 words cuts out. So we can still mostly, but it's like you can still. I don't know. It's like it's still working, but for some reason, it's like
it's like happened to me sometimes.
Yeah.
If you disconnect and reconnect, usually that solves it.
Oh, okay.
And I'm gonna get kicked out.
We're trying to kick you out, Mike. Yeah, that's what's happening.
In a nice way.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Mad Libs. I just come up with a noun that Mike might have said.
Yeah, right. When Dorelia and Casper, and then when he stuck his up.
All right, Mike. Go on a long monologue, and we'll see how it goes.
All right. Well, and then when they were,
God damn it. You messed it up too, because the first little bit always works fine, and then it's like it's not until for some reason it must have to do with like upload speed or whatever. But anyway,
I can see it. There's a little yellow exclamation mark that pops up periodically, and when I see that, I'll just pause for a second.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Which dramatic effect.
Well, that was a decent amount of talking there, and you never cut out, so that was good. So. Talking about Doralia going from bar to bar asking for Briomedes made me want to talk about like the next little thing about the institution of witch hunters in general. One, whether or not all of their belts are justified, and 2, both whether like witch hunting is a sort of. I wrote it better in my discussion questions. I don't have them up. But like whether it's a justifiable institution. And then Chris, you had posted something about, I think you called them Inquisitors Not in Space. And I don't have a ton of 40K lore backing, but I guess if they are Inquisitors Not in Space, how you wanted to kind of contrast the way that this novel wrestles with their actions versus, how people in 40K wrestle with the Inquisition's actions. But first let's keep it on just the Order of Azir. Do you feel like A, it's a salvageable institution, and B, do you feel like the novel does an interesting job in the way it guides your sort of questions about that? Andrew, how about you go first?
Sure. I'll say, like, I think Brian Meady's plot in and of itself suggests that you need some kind of order razier there, since clearly no other heroes were available to deal with this crisis, right? So you need something there to counter all the crazy shit that's going after the small people.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how much leeway they get?
It's like it feels like somebody else should have stepped in. This was a whole city that was being like taken over. Somebody else should have noticed.
It is honestly wild that nobody else stepped in.
People around.
Yeah, Excelsis has had a pretty rough last 100 years or so.
So it's
That's what I thought. I'm like, man, Excelsis just can't catch a break, man. But also, like, can you imagine, like, at the end of every battle, every like large scale conflict, you just got to be really wary of necromancers for like 75 years.
It was exactly like what I thought about. Like, it reframed fantasy for me. I was like, that's like a concern every time there's a mass battle in any book I read now where necromancy exists.
Well, like what Chris was saying, if necromancy exists, you burn everybody. Like, how is that not just every single culture?
You end up with like Pyregeists, probably, though. That's probably just fire ghosts. That's worse.
That's how you get Pyregeists.
Well, based on their Warcry rules, I think that's not too big a deal.
Yeah,
I think we're okay.
You're having a lot worse time with that. Yeah.
Wow, sorry to all the Pyregeist players out there.
We're
all
fine.
three
We're
of you.
fine. We're coping. Yeah, it's me, Mike, and somebody else.
Oh my god. I played against Mike. He was running Pyregeist, and his first attack, he rolls 665, deals a solid amount of damage. I'm a little nervous. And then I proceed to, I mean, you were kind of messing around, but I tabled you at the end of round 3. I mean, we're not even, it wasn't even round 4. And it was like,
and I didn't have a choice. It was like I was like, I have 8 models and you have a bunch of doors with guns, and I was like, if I try and play cagey, I get shot off the board. I might as well run in and just get killed face to face, or I can hurt you. So
and it was crazy that your fast melee army could not counter a slow shooting. Like, literally, fast melee is supposed to be the thing that beats slow shooting, and like, they were so bad, and that was tough. That was tough. Anyways,
what's worse, Richard Strachan in this book, Chris, or Pyregeist as a faction? What would you? We got a tier list.
Or the fact that KO Arcanauts are overtuned.
At least Pyregeists can take allies.
Rude.
That's not true. That they brought Jail along. Jail and Casper.
No, I mean Richard Strachan can't bring in allies.
Fair. Okay.
Oh,
right.
All right. For the
and
record,
if he does have allies, they're gonna come after me as soon as this video goes out.
Absolutely. Yeah. For the record, this was not my favorite book, but I don't think any of us dislike it the way Chris does.
Yeah, that's true.
Chris has said mostly positive things about it.
Yeah, that's actually true.
Chris also seems well read as a person, and I'm just the unwashed masses. I'm like, they were true people.
Well,
so I will say one of the reasons I like, to bring it back to Dan's questions, one of the reasons I dislike it so much is because I like the Order of Azir as a concept.
Sure. You have a whole warband with all the hats.
Yeah, their aesthetic is amazing. I love the...
Which does about the belts. Were the belts justified?
Oh, yes. Belts are always justified. You have to have belts to carry wacky shit.
A suggestion of a very soft sex scene. It doesn't have to go into detail, but I want a witch hunter sex scene. We don't get to see any of it, but we see the undressing and we see each belt come off, just so we know how many belts there are. Just to establish why the belts are there. And then he took off his second bandolier for his third crossbow.
And then as soon as you take off his leg belt, his leg just falls off.
That magically enchanted prosthetic.
Yeah. So I really want to like that, even though like in the real world, like the secret police who are judge, jury, and executioner are one of the things I hate the most. Like in speculative fiction, like I love this stuff. I love the Inquisition stuff in 40K. I love fucking Judge Dredd. Like I mean,
well, it's like that's what fantasy exists for, right? It's like that's the whole purpose of it, is to fulfill that fantasy, this idea that you kind of have. It's like playing Grand Theft Auto. It's like, I could steal a car and just punch people on the street. If that's your fantasy, go for it. But it lets you explore that space in a way that is safe.
Like Solomon Kane is probably my favorite Robert E. Howard character. I just like that witch hunter
Yeah.
vibe.
So Chris, that makes me wonder. So I had been doing these videos about my favorite reads of the year and putting The Empire of the Wolf #1 for like 2 years in a row because of the way they just like kind of dismantle the Judge Dredd character. And then my complaint about the third one is that they eventually let him off the hook. And that was when you said that you went and bought the first one. Was it that were you interested in the fact that they criticize and then accept that archetype, or was it just that you heard that the final book existed and that was what?
I was interested in the fact that they're criticizing
Okay.
that archetype. Right? Yeah. Judge Dredd is anti-Thatcherism satire.
Right.
Judge Dredd is not a good guy.
Right. Well, Judge Dredd is not a good guy, but the issue is that Dirty Harry is. And Dirty Harry and Judge Dredd are the same character, except one is told from Dirty Harry's perspective and one is told from anyway, blah blah blah.
Yeah, if you tell Dirty Harry from anybody else's perspective, Dirty Harry is not the good guy.
Is the villain.
So I think with what Darren said, though, this is a Judge Dredd book then, because Briamides was just trying to get his kid back and was doing something that would have not left any breadcrumbs. Right?
Yeah.
Yep. Briamides did almost nothing wrong except for let his kid die in the first place. Although I think that was like
he was going to brush
disease,
it
right?
Nobody would have known.
Nobody would have known.
I definitely do think that Brian.
We're seeing these guys at the very end of their arc. Still, like they're already hardened and bittered. So we don't like see the hopeful beginning of their journey as part of the Order of Azir to contrast.
Well, I don't think there was a hopeful beginning.
Yeah.
Like they showed Dorelia being trained and it's just grim and miserable.
But it was only
I would have loved to see Galen's hopeful beginning.
Like saying the hopeful beginnings of the Order as a whole, maybe?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Or like,
Galen before his wife dies, right? Presumably was a different person.
Yeah.
Like
we live in Shayish though, right? I feel like you can't be too hopeful in Shayish.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean,
I suppose.
That would be cool.
Just I really, really like the Callus and Toll books and character.
Okay.
And you stack these up, this one up, and the couple of short stories that I've read of these two to the Callus and Toll stuff, and it's just clumsy.
Sure.
What I think is interesting is that with the except of like the Gotrek novels, and granted this is because I'm not generally reading from the point of view, or in being interested in the point of view of anybody who's associated with Sigmar, but with the exception of Gotrek, every like Sigmar faction has just not really hit for me.
Interesting.
And that I think that's just because they all feel self-justified, or like self-important, but they're also idiots, right? And so you're supposed to root for them because they're the guys that you're supposed to root for, but they're all just kind of the worst, or just like not great.
It's funny because
like they're trying to make them flawed in an interesting way, and they fail to make it interesting. They're like, they're cool and like because they're good guys, so you have to root for them. But like they become more relatable when they have real flaws, and a lot of the flaws are just not that compelling. I think in a lot of the factions.
Yeah. I think for me, Stormcast work really well in the novels that I've read of them, and I think, we all play AOS not 40K because we have a certain amount of like, tell me I'm supposed to like a thing, I'm going to not like it, which I think is why the AOS community doesn't like Stormcast, because it's like, we're telling you you're supposed to like Stormcast, so I'm therefore not going to like it. But I do think that the Stormcast novels I've gotten into, they do a really good job linking the Stormcast experience to like veterans PTSD as a concept, and I really appreciate that, and I think it's made some of the Stormcast characters more compelling. So I don't know, as far as like which factions have worked for me, which ones haven't, I haven't read on enough different factions to be able to say, but I did just want to say that I think they've generally done a good job, like making Stormcast into real people and making, the whole idea of like, am I human or not could be really dumb, but when they give you the am I human or not or not from the perspective of someone who you can then chart in a more human universe. I think it was really compelling. So I do really like Stormcast novels, at least is what I was going to say.
Which is interesting too. I wonder if that has any kind of parallels with the fact that a lot of times the Space Marine novels are the ones that are at least written in a way that tends to be more relatable, right? Because you get the, like, sure, Space Marines are inhuman and ridiculous, but like when you get in their heads and you can write a compelling story for them, you can relate a little bit better, right? And they're kind of like ambiently cool.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you're like post-human demigod characters getting actual, character development and definition, I think, helps to make them compelling. Directly back to your question, the Order of Azir, because we got way off. I think that it is a defensible institution in just that it makes within the setting, yes, because they probably do more good than harm in total, but it's all like, do the ends justify the means? And I feel like in AOS, the answer has to be yes, because that's what drives the setting and it's everything that's terrible inside of it forward.
I mean, the GW answer to that question is absolutely yes, because it sells sweet witch hunter models.
Right.
Like,
seeing these models with so many belts.
Chris, have you thought about making Chaos Legionnaires and putting hats on those guys? They've got a lot of belts. A lot of...
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
a book I want to read, how the Chaos Legionnaires converted to Order of Azir because of the hats.
If I hadn't missed the open submissions call, that would 100% have been. Because that's
and belts. We're just here for the belts, boys.
No, I mean it combines my love of combines my love of silly hats that the Chaos Dwarves used to have in the world that was. Oh yeah, this is fantastic.
All right, I want to get into something that I thought about while Andy was talking, and the idea that like there's a "you want me on that wall" kind of characteristic to the Order of Azir. I do think it's really interesting. Like one of the criticisms I think of, this is more of a 40K criticism, but I think it applies to Order of Azir, is like how much of it is good critique versus how much of it is, like you hear a lot, the Imperium is justified because they do what they have to do from sort of lore heads in 40K. And kind of the counter is always they appear to be doing what they have to do because the authors have chosen to put things in their way that make it seem justified. And when you actually look at what's going on, it's a little bit shadier. But then it's also the author's prerogative to show you the negatives as well. And I wanted to focus in on the bar scene where Dorelia walks into a bar and
with the dwarves.
And it's like this is a bar where she has been before and she has done things that were not okay. And then she goes in on legitimate business, wanting to say like, "Hey, have you seen a man with a creepy son?" And it's written in this way that is both infuriating, and if I were the author, I would say, well, yeah, I wrote it that way, dummy. Like, you're supposed to be infuriated. But where she kills, I can't remember, did she kill 2 people or 3? I know she kills 2 people. 3? Okay.
I know at the end of it, all the dwarves are dead, right?
Yeah, and the barman.
Yeah.
I knew I liked this book for a couple of different reasons. And killing dwarves is just another reason for me to get behind.
Yeah. So she kills
the DHP.
So she kills 3 people in a bar fight that technically they hit first, but I feel like it's impossible to interpret it in any way other than she started it.
Right, yeah, she started it by getting pissed drunk and mean, and the spaghetti incident is the term that I've heard used, or the thing that happened off screen that people reference, right?
Right. Yeah, what'd you make of that? What'd you make of that scene? Because I felt like this was one of the more important scenes of the book, even though it's not doesn't relate to the plot at all. Which we could then argue about whether or not you should have a book where the most important scene in the book doesn't relate to the plot. But regardless, what did you make of that scene, Darren? You seemed excited.
I've got
to go for it. Yeah.
Two points on this. One that I think isn't important to plot analysis, but I really wanted anyways. How in the world they didn't go back into that bar and her get ganked by the dwarves that she killed, like when she was chasing Briarmedes? I have no idea how the author missed that. I wanted that to happen so bad, right?
Oh, the dwarves she killed are undead, and now they're attacking her again. Oh.
Yeah, would have been amazing, right? And maybe the two kids that
they pop back up, like because it's just flowing. Like I got him, don't worry. He just goes, like Undertaker.
Yeah. How that didn't happen will just make me sad forever. And so Richard Strachan, I'm very sad about that.
You blew it, Rich.
Yeah, you blew it, Rich. But from an actual plot analysis perspective, I feel like that served very well to kind of show that the for witch hunters, they will separate their personal lives from their work lives, right? But for everybody else, those two things are the same, right? The thing that you do as a witch hunter when you're off the clock, as if you ever actually have that,
right.
Still affected just the same, right? Nobody cares that now you're on official business. You're still an ass, and I still want you off my bar, right?
Right.
And then she shows them why that is a valid idea to have, because she kills them anyways, right? Like, you don't want the person in your bar ever, whether they're on official business or not, because if they're not on official business, they'll get up to shenanigans and get kicked out of the bar. If they're on official business, they'll get mad at you and shoot you, right?
It does the Order of Azir, if that's their standard behavior, it does kind of frame them as like ultimate what's the word I'm thinking of here?
Douchebags?
No, yeah, but like, what's like the psychological term for not like pure narcissism, right? Like where you're just like, you've justified to yourself that it's okay what you did before to come back here now because you're on business now. It's you have a good reason for it, so they should be okay with it as well. And I think that's a really interesting point to view it through, is to see like, is it okay? And then to call back to Dan's original question about that, like, is the Order of Azir justified in who they are and stuff like that? I think that's a great way to say no to it.
Well, I like the concept of the Order of Azir, but what I like is the trope of the investigator who knows more than the normal person,
right? And
so is obligated morally to work to save humanity from the stuff they don't know.
Right.
Like, I get off on that shit in weird tales and Lovecraftian mythos and stuff. And there's none of that with these characters. Like, especially her. She's a witch hunter because a vampire killed her mom. That's the only reason. That, to me, is not...
Yeah.
Like, I don't know that we can assume too much about the whole order just by, her actions. It's almost like she got into the Order of Azir because she wanted to kill vampires.
And it was kind of thrust upon her.
It's strictly a revenge book.
Yeah, it is strictly a revenge book.
Yeah, it's just not what I find most compelling in that archetype.
Yeah, it's like trying to put Kill Bill into your Sherlock Holmes, as far as...
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Kill Bill rules, by the way.
I'm imagining Sherlock on the violin doing the Kill Bill noise, like... kind of a sick mashup.
I do think that if they had brought, again, because this scene should have existed in the book, had she gone back through that bar and got ganked by those zombies, it would have been like, well, if it wasn't the consequences of my actions, right? Both in like the thing that happened off screen, but then also the thing that happened on screen, and like maybe that would have served in some way, shape, or form to be a character progression moment for Draley to be like, man, I got to be more careful about how I go around shooting up bars because sometimes it might bite me sometimes literally in the ass.
And
right?
it ends up
Right, and
benefiting her.
then you're contrasting it with her treatment of the fake witch hunter in the first act,
Right.
and you're giving character growth.
Right.
Like that, yeah, that would have been very cool.
Yeah, and the fact that her dust up in the bar ends up benefiting her because those deserters then tell her literally everything she needs to know is kind of an odd misstep in the plot, where then it's almost like the plot tries to justify her behavior in the bar, even while presenting you with her behavior in the bar.
I think that's the whole point of the book, though. I think like the whole point of the book is to say like what Jael did in the start was not okay, and Bria Medes is essentially just an extrapolation of what Jael has done, and so it's pure evil, and the ends justify the means essentially.
Sure.
I also feel like this book was written in part for the people who, like, basically for the insufferable asses who are like, I'm going to go around and do whatever I want, and there are no consequences for me. Look, I'm a cool person with a gun. Like, kind of like the anime kid who thinks that he's super cool.
Whoa. That's
just
me.
kind of the vibe that I'm getting.
Careful.
Right, sorry, my bad.
They released an anime recently called Dan to Dan, and as a Dan, I have to watch every episode, and it's actually pretty good.
Yeah, but you're biased.
Yeah,
that's true. But
yeah,
still,
I'm not gonna listen to your review. You're a Dan. You're one of them.
Yeah. No, it's amazing, you guys. It's a girl who believes in ghosts bets a boy who believes in aliens that there are no aliens, and then he bets her the same, that there are no ghosts, and then they both go to a place that she says is haunted, that he says is bullshit, and that then he sends her to a place that he says aliens abduct people in this place, and she says that's bullshit, and both of them find out that they were both wrong, and that's the first episode, and it works really well from there. I think it's really good. Anyway,
I'm expecting the lady who gets abducted by aliens to end up like Kate McKinnon in SNL.
Yeah, immediately what I was thinking of. Yeah. He freaking sent me out in the field.
And
so in the anime, are the ghosts and the aliens the same thing, and they're just interpreting the one thing as two different things, or are there both ghosts and aliens?
Spoilers for Dan to Dan. Earth is very juicy, and aliens are trying to figure out how to invade, but the thing they're nervous about is that ghosts are so powerful that if they make war on Earth, what are the ghosts going to do?
And you're going to end up with more ghosts, just like in
the necromancy problem.
Yeah. And
right?
It's like
if Kroot came down into Warcry and had to face the Pyregeists.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so it's like the aliens there's like a shot of Earth that's like surrounded by alien ships, and so yeah, the aliens are nervous about these like super powerful evil ghosts. The problem is the evil ghosts are like doing bad things on Earth. So it's like they have to stop the ghosts and stop the aliens at the same time. But if they stop the ghosts, the aliens will invade. Anyway, it works. I think it's really
nice. All right.
Back to this book. The thing that I thought was really interesting about that bar scene, right, is like, is Doralia just going around doing this all the time? And
I think that's the implication, yeah.
Right. And so then it's like the whole "you want me on that wall" part, I just couldn't get past it, because it's like she's going around doing this all the time. We see what must be the Order of Azir's most shining moment in the history of the Order. I mean, Excelsis gets messed up more in this book than it does in the whole Kragnos saga, right?
But like Darren said, though, technically Bria Medes was probably going to fix it. At least
yeah. Depending on the timeline of when his kid died, he might have gone before Kragnos. He avoided the whole thing entirely.
Well, and we don't know if his spell was going to work, is the thing. Like,
that's true.
I'm inclined to say it wasn't going to work.
I think for the sake of argument, I will say it would have gone off without a hitch. Otherwise, my foundation is made of sand.
Right. I mean,
now what I want is a follow-up book where somebody righteous from the Order of Aesir is tracking down Doralia and bringing her to justice.
Yeah.
It's an auditor, someone that's just like, she did what again? Checking the expense account, like, what?
Yeah.
So much fire water.
Yeah, I seriously would expect that to happen if she had a follow-up.
Yeah.
Right, because she's just been criming all over the place. Like,
Yeah.
the first thing we do is we see her murder a guy who, again, he deserved it, but on the basis of the hunch that she murders him on, it's like, how many people have you murdered on this hunch, and what is your hit rate, really?
Yeah.
I think, but is that a fair question? Like you said before, Dan, is it fair to view it through that lens when the intent is very clearly pulp?
I mean, okay, so
It's messy.
you're right. This is something I wrote online that I haven't put out in this video, but is it fair to ask this book deeper questions that, like, is it meant to answer
Yes.
those questions? Okay.
It is perfectly fair to ask any work of literature those questions. Right? The author has a choice whether to engage with that stuff or not.
Mm-hmm.
And Dick just hand waved all that stuff. And same thing in the short stories that I've read with the Van Dance. It's always the end justifies the means.
Okay. I haven't read their short stories.
There's a really compelling story in one of the recent anthologies where you think, and sorry, spoilers for this story, but I won't tell you the name of it, so at least there's some. But it's basically it's an interrogation,
mm-hmm.
and the whole story reads like she is really mistreating this normal citizen.
Sure.
And then the last page, it's revealed, nope, he's really a cultist. The end justified everything that happened.
Oh, that's awful.
In the other 20 pages.
Yep.
It's just...
Yeah,
like there's no... this is a real world issue that speculative fiction is amazing at shining a light on.
Yeah.
Because you're not shining the light too close, right? You get the shadows.
Right.
Right? You get to look at some of that stuff without looking at the specifics because you're looking at the shadows.
Yeah.
That's exactly what pulp fiction is good at doing. And Dick just chose not to do any of that.
Well, it sounds like that's a through line for these characters in every story, then, Chris. And I'll defer to you on that because I've only read this and I was falling asleep many nights at the end of chapters. So I've read a lot of the beginning and middle of the chapters, not always the ends. But is that not okay to make characters through that lens then? And is that potentially also its own commentary to point out, say, like, hey, yes, these people do justify their means or their ends despite the means every single time. And yes, sure, in every book they're framed as the heroes and everything like that. But there could also be a meta commentary of, I got to write a book to do it, but it's meant to be striking in juxtaposition to what should be happening, and to point out that, like, no, the what you do matters.
I think there's a bit of a Poe's law problem. If we go with that idea, I think that's a really interesting and reasonable idea if everybody engaging with Warhammer story is like a very experienced filterer of media. But one of my issues with certain, I mostly like the Warhammer setting, but when I don't like it, often my issue is that there's a Poe's law problem, which Poe's law is that there is no position you can take sarcastically where you can do it so clearly that people don't think that you are genuinely for that position, right? So, like, there is no way that you can say that this interrogation scene was justified /S where no one will just delete the /s.
I've never heard /s spoken in my whole entire life. It was striking. I was like, "What's he? Oh, sarcasm."
Yeah. Right, where like there is no way that you can say that, you know, the fascist imperium is justified while, you know, illustrating that it isn't, such that people won't just flock to saying the imperium is awesome.
I think that's also just an inherent issue with art as well, though, right? To take it even broader, like you don't get to tell people how to interpret your art, and I think that's just inherently part of it and why it's so compelling.
Yeah, I mean, the guy who created Breaking Bad now, he's in interviews being like, I regret the entire show. I wish I'd never made it. Like, he's like, there should never be a show about a bad boy ever again, because I'm sure part of it is like, because I made the best one. But like, but part of it is he's legitimately like horrified by the way in which most people continue rooting for Walter White, even during seasons 4 and 5. You know, and it's like, it's 5 seasons, right? Or either way, like the later seasons, right? Like
the later ones,
you can root for Walter White in season 1. I don't think you can root for Walter White after season 1. I don't think at all. But I also haven't seen the later seasons.
Oh, for real? He's such a great character. Like, and the story is told so well. Like, yeah, he's sympathetic. Everyone, no. Yeah, it really is just a beautiful piece of art that was done in so much care and attention taken to the show. Yeah, you should finish it.
I've heard nothing but good things. I actually quit Barry. I don't know if you guys have seen Barry. It's the
Will Forte.
No, it's
Bill Hader.
Bill Hader, yes.
One of the SNL guys. I knew.
Yeah. Where he plays a hitman trying to be, trying to kind of create a new life for himself, but essentially he just can't change his stripes, and there's a point where he's killing a Colombian man, and the Colombian guy is like in Spanish telling him all the reasons why he shouldn't do this. And after that episode where it essentially like it does the Poe's Law thing of like, it's trying to show you, it is giving you this guy giving an incredible performance in Spanish with no subtitles, giving you an incredible performance in Spanish about like why Barry is irredeemable. And yet it's like, I just quit the show after, because it was like, that's going to go over everyone's heads. This show is going to continue to be a Poe's Law show. I just refuse to watch it anymore. And I don't know, like I have that problem. I think it pops up with this book too, whereas like Duralia shooting up the bar works out for her perfectly, and I don't.
What's that? Yeah, it's saying that good stuff happens to bad people, even if those bad people are actually they're being portrayed as good in a sense, right?
Totally. And I think that's I think that's kind of a generous interpretation though, right? Because to me it's like, does this not only say that good stuff happens to bad people, that in a way that should make you roll your eyes and being like, fuck bad people, but it to me it's like
all my homies hate bad people,
right? and to me it's like, it comes out and it's like justifying the bad behavior. I don't know. I kind of wrestle with that. Go on.
I think it's not compelling without the consequences of the bad behavior.
Right.
I think artistically it's not compelling. I mean, I think there's a larger discussion that, this is the complete wrong venue for, about how the anti-hero motif in American popular culture has gone like entirely off the deep end.
I agree with that.
But that's
a big question. So it's too big for this.
Yeah, scratch that. Yeah. Let's not even go down that. I just think like it's less artistically compelling if there's no wrestling with that. Yeah, like if
Richard Scratchin is at the forefront of that movement.
That's the only thing he's at the forefront of. So it would have been like, compelling if we find out that Dale Morgaine was really on a revenge quest,
Mm-hmm.
Or what if
she helps kill Briomedes, and then they kill her, and they have to wrestle with the consequences of that.
Mm-hmm.
What if like
or they have to wrestle with the consequences of, hey, we worked with a vampire.
Right.
Right. Either way, there's
we worked
like
with a
room
vampire.
For the characters to grow, to change, to discover something about themselves.
Yeah, and it feels like there's points where Richard is trying to wrestle with this, where he just doesn't explore it enough. Where, like, there's the point where Jael is like acting kind of frisky, and Doralia is like, oh, she's fed this night. Where it's like clearly, and then I think Jael even admits to it later, like she eats someone while they've brought her to Excelsis. And so, like what you were saying, Chris,
you're cutting out at some really important points here.
Oh no!
I was worried it was me that was chopping.
Yeah.
Oh no!
Kind of the same thing that was happening to Mike earlier. It's like, oh yeah, and then and then nothing.
Yeah, sometimes when you're sharing your screen and talking, it's rough. Well, luckily the viewers can hear everything I said. So,
lovely. Yeah, I'll just nod along.
Yeah, so she eats someone when she's in Excelsis. And then Doralia realizes that she's eaten someone when she's in Excelsis. And so Chris was saying, let's wrestle with the fact that we worked with a vampire. If they had met or confronted the family of the person she eats while she's in Excelsis, right? That could have been a really powerful thing for the author to have done.
Even just like exploring like the ramifications of your friend Casper being like not only killed by her, but like right after they killed him, you're like, I guess we'll be friends with a vampire now and let her drink all of his blood. Like I think that could have had more of an internal conflict and exploration.
Right.
Yeah, the absolute lack of consequences for their actions was just really off-putting.
No, Darren, the consequence is that she felt hungover the next day because his blood was nasty because he was already dead.
The fact that they had to hang out with that dirty, nasty vampire, that was the consequence. No moral guilt or anything.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking it would have been kind of interesting if Doralia, in that bar, one of the people she killed was one of Jael's kids, and that was, no.
Yeah.
To be fair,
those were like adopted vampire spawn, right?
Yeah, but I think the implication is that vampires feel an ownership over the people they spawn. Yeah.
I mean, to be fair to Richard Strachan, who I've been like semi-comedically like bashing on at every point. I mean, it's possible that there was a 400-page version of this novel where they were wrestling with that, and there was a brief from the Black Library to trim it down and just keep the action, because that's what sells a Black Library novel.
Right.
It's very GW, to be fair. Like the book kind of fills every niche that I expected GW. This is my first Black Library book I've read too, and it really it did all of the things I thought it was going to do. It reminded me of when I used to read a lot of the R.A. Salvatore Driss novels. Where it was just like, okay, I see where everything's going, and like maybe there's a twist that I don't see coming, but it's not a twist that is particularly heart-wrenching or meaningful to me.
I wish we could.
Along those lines, here's my alternate take. This isn't really a fiction. This is his fictionalization of a D&D session, D&D campaign arc, because the type of crap you see here is exactly what you expect a pair of PCs to do throughout the thing. You get into the bar fight, you're like, oh shit, I forgot to do non-lethal on these guys. Oh well, they're dead. I was unofficial. It's fine.
That's his hold-down campaign.
I like that take.
Yeah.
What you're saying is that Richard Strachan is basically Pat Rothfuss, just putting his D&D character into a novel.
Wow, and I thought I was being mean to the guy.
Wow. It is wild. The rise and fall of Pat Rothfuss is and he hasn't fallen. I mean, there are still like insane Pat Rothfuss fans, but the way that people I know have started talking about Pat Rothfuss over the course of time it's been very interesting. Anyway, that is beyond the scope of this session.
I found the opportunity to take a dig at Pat, and I needed to take it.
Just crossing it off the list of things that you needed to get done. Chris, I was wondering though, is Andy's interpretation that it's actually your fault that you were the character that was in this book essentially the whole time doing all these terrible things? How does that change your perspective on it?
Then it's bad DMing.
It sounds like a lack of personal, like taking responsibility of your actions. You're just offloading to the DM. Unbelievable, Chris.
Yeah,
I can't believe you.
Yeah, I mean, it's not fair to compare like every Black Library book to Dan Abnett and Adrian Tchaikovsky, both of whom are like well-known and well-renowned speculative authors in their own right.
They don't write as many witch hunter novels though, so
I wish they would.
Did Abnett do Eisenhorn?
Yeah. I know Abnett can do it because he's done it for the Inquisition. Like I would, but yeah, I mean that's not fair to really any other author, right? If that's my standard,
right? I do think that you made a really good point with like there's probably a lot of this novel that ended up on the cutting room floor, especially because GW is like tends to be like a very efficient company when it comes to shipping things, and so there's probably like a legitimate metric where it's like you get this much volume in your book, which means X number of pages, because that is what we can fit in a shipping container, because we're going to sell it for $25, and it needs to make this much money out of a box or out of a shipping unit or whatever. And so, like the dwarf coming back from the dead, I wonder if that didn't end up on the cutting room floor. I believe that it must have existed because it absolutely should have.
You want to see the director's cut? Hallowed ground.
Yeah, exactly.
Director's cut. Release the Strachan cut.
The thing that confuses me about that is
release the Strachan. That's great.
This book though was like 10 hours on audio, and they've got a couple like God's Bane and what's the one about the I think it's like Ever Chosen Son or something. It's about the guy who becomes a Chaos Lord from
God Eater's Son?
God Eater's Son, yes. God Eater's Son is 23 hours in audio. Like they let that thing go long. And I think God Eater's Son, I had problems with it, but there are bits in there that I think are incredible, and there are bits in there I think are horrible. I think that would have been that would be a really interesting. I'd be willing to reread it if you guys wanted to do that one. But it's too long, actually. No, it's too long to do for book club. But I don't know. I think they might be kind of forgiving about length at GW. I do think that they, based on the tone of every GW novel, I think that they're incredibly unforgiving about chapters that don't fit their house style. But on length, I think they might be pretty forgiving. I don't know anything about it, but
and I was just looking that one up. Noah Van Wyn is the author of that one, and just crossing over like fantasy worlds, not fantasy worlds, but just like Warhammer worlds. I know, not Warhammer World though, but the guys over on the Mortal Realms interviewed Noah, and I think it was around that time. I don't know if they interviewed him about that book or not, but I know they've interviewed Noah Van Wyn, and they've interviewed a couple of authors over there. It might be kind of interesting to. I might go dig that up and listen. And it's cool to get, direct author insight, right? How often do you get that?
Yeah. There's bits of that novel that are a mess, but there's also bits like the main character, spoilers, falls in love with a corn worshiper. And
from the Midwest.
Yeah.
It's in Iowa.
But like there's a really interesting bit of like the way that chaos worshippers can still like live fulfilling lives and still be real people and still like a literal wrathmonger, because this person is a wrath, the person he falls in love with is a wrathmonger, and a wrathmonger can fall in love, right? So it's kind of an interesting
I'm
Yeah,
kind of
interesting
as
thing to
a
have talked about.
direct like foil to this though. That's kind of interesting, and it makes me want to read that book just because our consensus in the way that we've been talking about this book is that like being a good guy, you can't live a fulfilling life. It's just all grime and muck, and you gotta grind out the bad guys no matter what, and doesn't matter what you do in the meantime either, because there's some bad guy that you can justify doing whatever you need to get there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's something I'd like to see more of in the Mortal Realms books. Is like the Mortal Realms has so much stuff that is new to Warhammer storytelling. Like that example you just mentioned, Dan. They've done a lot to humanize the Chaos Worshippers.
Yeah.
They've done a lot of really amping up the high fantasy, like the Glimmerings and Excelsis. They've done a lot with seeing some of the other races and in like new places like Gur with the Hungry Trees that they've never done anything before. And here they are in this book telling the same Warhammer story that they've been telling for 35 years.
But I think that's the thing it sells though, right? I think that's hard to fully get away from because there are people still buying that same Warhammer story. So like I get the critique. I don't disagree with it. In the scope of a business, I understand why they print that book.
Yeah, it's just there's just so much scope of stuff that they could be doing.
Yeah. Well,
right, the lost opportunity cost for producing like yet another grim investigative book.
Yeah. I feel like in AOS in general, in the Mortal Realms, for each piece that they give us that is new, they feel like they have to give us one piece that is funny. I'm doing like all these hand motions that you guys can't see, but the viewers at home can see. They give us something. They give us one thing that is old world and one thing that is 40K. It just feels like AOS is this triangle of new stuff, old world stuff, and 40K stuff, and they just kind of they shoehorn all three of them in, and I don't know if it's a lack of confidence in the new or if it is actually just like if we give them these familiar things they'll accept the new. I'm not sure what it is, but it does often feel like this setting gets kind of equal bits of all three of those. I don't know.
I've said this before for AOS, or like my theory on how Warhammer lore works is that like Warhammer Fantasy was like just old school like classic kitchen sink fantasy, right? And then 40K was that, but in space. And then AOS is just 40K in fantasy, but with just enough, like you were saying, nuggets from the old world to try to kind of bring some of those people along. And so, yeah, I think I agree with you 100%. I think that it's because the success of 40K was like, hey, what if we just did that again, but different, right?
Yeah.
And so you see a lot of those parallels because I think that was intentional.
And part of
the
shift to like crazy pantheons in AOS, I think, is because at that time in fantasy, there was this movement among fantasy authors to be like, you should read ancient mythology texts so that at least you're ripping off something other than just Tolkien. And it does feel like they read those things, did that, and decided to rip off something other than Tolkien, which I think is an improvement, a huge improvement. I mean, I think the old world is so bad. This video was doing really well, but all of a sudden we got 75 downvotes because I think the old world is awful. I think it's just all of the lore behind the old world is unreadable.
Well,
like I think it's
except for the lizardmen names. They got cool, silly names that are fun to read.
Sure. Yeah.
I think if there's one thing that I've learned about your tastes in fantasy or gaming or settings that you want to immerse yourself in, it's like historical and pseudo-historical things that like are based on, I don't know, like questionable acts from the past, like when we were talking about like Port Royal or whatever. Not that I'm interested, or like
no, it's true.
When you're looking at the old world, it's based on a lot of like historical, like most of the people who wrote that were archaeologists, right? And so like they're pulling from a lot of places that weren't necessarily like or the inspirations weren't necessarily like totally good, right? There's a lot of weirdness in there that kind of creeps in because the source material is weird, right?
Right.
Whether it's crazy colonizers or like weird exotic civilizations or whatever. So it kind of tracks, I guess, in your dislike for that. And that's
Dan, you're so predictable. Yeah. It's so easy to tell what you're gonna say.
That's fine. Dan has tagged my gaming taste like to a T, and it's really funny. I feel like I'm starting to figure his settings tastes out.
Yeah. Well, listen, there's no better way to harvest downvotes than to talk about race. But by the way, click like, comment, or subscribe if you have gotten this far in the video, because I'm about to get a bunch of dislikes. But no, as someone who's not white but who passes for white, just because that is the Latino experience for a lot of people, it is what you're saying, Darren, is very true. Where it's like, you enjoy a lot of the privilege that America gives on certain people, and then all of a sudden, it's like something will happen, and the bottom will fall out, and you'll be like, "Oh shit, I'm not comfortable with any of this." How to like. And you live on this kind of interesting edge as a Latino person in the United States. I don't know. It is like that though. I think that's very observant of you to kind of to catch that. That's interesting.
Yeah, and I think that like as the annoying majority of people, I'm like, oh yeah, no, it's like. Yeah, we've just been bad the whole time, but like that's okay because we're still good people, right? And we don't have to feel bad about putting ourselves into settings where like I'm playing a group of people that might have sold a different warband into slavery. Like that's totally cool. Like, we can whitewash that and not feel bad about it at all.
You can make an allegory for Duralia here. Like, yeah, I can go into this
exactly.
Bar, right?
Yeah, I can go
into that
scene. Oh yeah. Oh man. So.
We're doing great.
If nobody has any more on that part, I want to fire off a question for you guys. Dan, I don't know if it was in there. It's just got me thinking about it, staring at him for so long. Which I know, Dan, you talk about this a lot, that the books are just propaganda for selling models. Which models did you see that were being sold in this book? And did any of the appearances make you want to buy any models that were featured in the book?
Are there models? Funny. Are there models for the Palatine Guard? Because the charge of the Palatine Guard or Palatine Guard, I don't know. When they get their reinforcements and those guys charge down and like fuck up so many zombies, that kind of got me for a second. I was into that.
I think getting a vampire lord model that isn't just the lady with a shield and bats in her hair would be cool.
I feel like they got some cool female vampires in there.
Yeah, I feel like the lady from that kind of gives Jael Morgaine, Bella Fontaine, I think is her name.
Oh yeah, totally.
With the sweet hair and the swords going different directions.
Totally,
that's a sweet one.
I feel like the big mass of zombies, like we were saying right off the rip, kind of inspired me to like. Well, one, it justified the fact that I bought all those bone splitters that I played with for like just a little bit of time, because now they can also be deadwalkers. They're not the right size base, but that's okay.
Yep.
Because we're here for fun.
So, I want to keep talking to you guys, but we've gotten to the point where a YouTube video of us at this point has gone too long. So I don't want to cut our meeting short, but I do want to cut the video short. But for the purposes of people who might have made it this far, let's talk about books that we might do next. I wanted to put out a couple ideas. One is the Dark Oath book, because of what we talked about with maybe interested in Chaos Warriors. The other one is something we talked about as far as Drekkie Flint, maybe doing something with that series. So if we were to vote, what would you guys pick? Andy, let's start with you if you're still awake. we've
I'd probably go Darko's side, although I kind of feel like Chris should pick since she hated this novel so much. Like,
yeah, the person who hated it the most.
Keep him in so he doesn't run away.
Who's the counterpoint?
Oh, that's funny.
You were cutting out, Andrew, but I think you just said I should pick the next book. That's what
Yeah.
I got out of that.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think that's not true. I think I should be the last person to pick the book because I spent
Okay.
so much time bashing this one.
Well, Andy voted for Dark Oath. What would you vote for, Chris, between Dark Oath and Drecky Flint?
So which Drecky Flint book is that?
You would almost certainly want to start from the beginning.
I'd want to start with the first one, yeah.
Which one? And that's by which one is that? Is
That's
the
by Richard Strachan.
Really?
That's okay. I like Guy Haley stuff, so I wasn't sure whether we'd be starting with that or there was another like KO book that preceded the Drecky Flint series, right?
Sure, I don't know. Yeah.
I'd vote for the Arkanauts Oath.
For what?
The Arkanauts Oath.
Okay, so we got 1 and 1. Mike, you next.
Man, I wanted to go last. I'm happy to do either, but I still have a copy of Arkanauts Oath that I borrowed from somebody.
All right,
2 years
you got
ago,
Arkanauts
and
Oath. What Darren, what do you?
Hallowed.
Yeah, I feel like Mike is soul bound, not honor bound to read Arkanauts Oath. I usually just consume all of these books by audiobook while I'm painting, and I've already done Arkanauts Oath, and it sounds like the way that you had kind of pitched God Eater's Son, if Dark Oath does anything close to that, I would be more interested in Dark Oath. And so that's what I'm gonna vote for. I also I didn't do a critical analysis of Arkanauts Oath when I did it, or when I went for it, read it, listened to it. And it's cool, it's fun. But I feel like Dark Oath has the potential to have a bit more juice for the squeeze.
All right.
From an analysis perspective.
So that's tied 2-2. I have to take a second. I'm gonna run to the bathroom and then decide after I come back.
And meantime, let's fight.
No, I do love this is set up perfectly 2-2 for the guy who's putting the video up on his own channel to break the tie. Use whatever he wants to do.
He didn't pay us.
Get a quick pull, JJ, if you can.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Which cover is closest to one of JJ's pants? That's the deciding vote.
Or
definitely the KO one. The cover
KO
of the
darkness. You get a bunch of steamships on there. That'd be pretty cool pants.
I would be interested to listen back through Arkanauts Oath, but with a notebook in hand this time instead of I don't know what I was doing the last time. I think it was just what it was on when I was cooking or doing the dishes.
So so if you've already read that, would you say there was is there substance in that for us to talk about, or is it just like a ripping adventure yarn that we'll have a 20-minute discussion about and be done with?
I think it's the latter. I don't think that there's much there to really pull apart and discuss.
Okay, then I'll change my vote to Dark Oath.
There might be less than Hallowed Ground, because Hallowed Ground we at least had the parental, especially the dad perspectives or whatever. What do you do for your kids, right? I don't recall having that kind of a thing in Arkanauts Oath, but it is kind of a cool, fun pirate adventure. And yeah, I think there's something people
argument for it again.
It's cool. I wouldn't call it literature, but there's no guarantee that Dark Oath is like that either, right? Dark Oath is a book that exists to sell an army box, right? And so what is it going to do? It's going to name all of the different things that are in the army box. It's going to give you the perspective of one of the hero characters, and there's going to be a battle with some poor city of Sigmar that is going to die or heroically rebuff the attack. This is totally different. I've read not Badland Rising. Badland Rising is great. I think it's just Gloomspite. I'm so mad. It's about the title is Gloomspite, right? So you'd think that it'd be from the perspective of goblins. It's not. they attack a city of Sigmar. You would expect it to go terribly for the city. It kind of does, but like, so frustrating. Like you get
You
a lot
want
of
a
cool like
Gloomspite to win.
stuff, but hey, I'm still on Bad Loon Rising. If you're going to read a Gitz book, and also Git Slayer, but that has Malineth in it, and Malineth is a bad model. It is also insufferable.
Is that the new one that they just
No, Vermin Slayer. Andy, did you read Vermin Slayer and you said that it was good?
No, that wasn't me.
No. Someone said that it was good.
Okay. I would have voted. What was that?
In a plot twist, Chris decided to flop his vote. Although maybe he's changed his mind again since. I don't know.
That's true.
Oh, plot twist. So are we on Dark Oath or?
I think
no?
so. Yeah, from what Darren was saying, it sounds like
I don't know.
Arcanauts Oath may be really fun, but there may not be a lot of meat for us to chew on after the fact.
Vacation read.
Yeah, let's do Dark Oath then. I find the concept of Dark Oath to be really interesting as far as being one of the villain factions, but being the way they've set them up as having very human desires and having very human motivations, I think is really interesting. I think God Eater's Son fell into a lot of the traps that any book that tries to get you to root for a war criminal is going to fall into. And there's also a lot of just advertisements for models in that book. I mean, 22 hours on audio, it could have been 15 if you'd just taken out all of the advertisements for models. But some of the core things about trying to find out what makes a chaos worshiper in the mortal realms tick were kind of interesting. So yeah, I'm excited for Dark Oath.
I think they have some really cool just like background, like the lore that I've heard about them just as a faction. I think is really, really compelling, and the models are cool.
Yeah, and maybe we'll get Cody to actually read the book.
Yeah, we might finally do it.
It's here.
Yeah. I traded for some like chaos stuff, so I've got it. Like I don't know if it's a Thoricon or just a Therodon with a great axe, but I'm like I'm not a Slaves to Darkness guy.
Sure.
But if I was, what could I add to this warband to make it pop? And so right now it's just a bunch of underworld stuff, but I would be. The book might finally convince me to buy models that I'll never use and try to put some kind of cohesive warband.
That's what models are for. You buy them.
Hell yeah, brother.
Yeah.
Just look at if you squint your eyes and look in the background of Mike's camera, you can see all the models that he's bought.
You can see some.
That's the.
Oh, that's the other side. Oh yeah, there they are.
Oh, there they are.
And a singular shelf.
Yikes!
Yeah, that's all right. Here's an archivist.
There's a Dark Oath box over there. Topical.
Nice. Topical. So does that mean that when we see each other, you're gonna? What if we all after or during the thing? And this is just me trying to get you to give me your minis. What if we all
that after?
All right. So wait, before we get into this, I'm just gonna cut it short for the YouTube. We can keep chatting, but cool. For everyone, I hope you join us to read Dark Oath. I hope you join the Patreon to read Dark Oath with us and join in on the next one. But if you do, may all your rolls be crits. If you don't read Dark Oath, I hope you only roll ones. We'll cut it there, and we'll just keep chatting.